welcome back. This is Monty once again. Good morning, you guys. I'm currently wiping down my car, and I'm thinking about healthcare and the various resources that we have available on our website in relation to healthcare. Even though I run a surveillance and security equipment business, we do have some overlapping interests, if you will, as far as healthcare is concerned. On our website, there's a category called personal and healthcare protection products. So we do have products, and we do have other resources for healthcare, and I think it's just befitting to add more and more solutions that revolve around healthcare. Speaking of such, I think we have a very interesting article, our podcast, that we're going to publish on the website and associate with an article. It has a lot of detail. We'll see how far we can get into it because it's very comprehensive, but I think it's very revealing in terms of what healthcare is all about, where it's come from, where it is now, where it's going, in addition to being very practical in terms of it giving you guys a lot of resources that you can act upon if you want to take advantage of any of the things that we're going to talk about today. So, my name is Monty Henry. I'm owner of DPL Surveillance Equipment. We're a full-service surveillance and security equipment company, and we have lifetime guarantees and warranties on all the products. We have 24/7, 365 tech, sales, and customer support. We have a very large and growing articles directory, podcast directory, blogs, demonstration videos on the website where you can see us demonstrate the products. We just have a whole lot of resources, and all of them are for free. And we encourage you guys to go there, visit often, because we're adding additional information all the time. And every time you go back there, you're probably going to find something new, in either of these categories: healthcare, cybersecurity, surveillance, counter-surveillance, economics and finance, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and then miscellaneous for all those items that don't fit into the other categories. And in addition to that, we accept Bitcoin, by the way. The shopping cart has been upgraded so that if you have Litecoin, if you have Bitcoin, if you have Ethereum, if you have Bcash, and a lot of you guys have made a lot of money in those cryptocurrencies, and so are you Bitcoin cryptocurrency millionaires? Patronize our website. Get your hands on some of these interesting spy gadgets and toys that are going to be very interesting for you to play with if you like spy gadgets and spy toys and such. In addition to that, let's see what else. Oh yeah, we're moving away from the MasterCards and the Visas and American Expresses because those blood-sucking, rent-seeking vampires are extracting $70 billion a year out of our pockets. And as we move closer and closer to a cashless society like China and Japan, Sweden, a number of these countries are way ahead of us. They don't have these types of intermediaries and middlemen and these rent seekers who basically only job is to add a lot of complication and bureaucracy and overhead. And besides that, legacy financial system, the credit card companies and the banking, traditional banking systems, the merchant processors particularly, in addition to the credit card issuers, and see, a lot of these guys are part of a legacy financial infrastructure that hasn't kept up. We're going to put more and more information on our website to give you an idea what a cashless society looks like. When you can walk up and down the street, go to your favorite vendors, go to your favorite retail shops or something, and just quickly scan a barcode and have that money quickly deposited into your account. bypassing MasterCard and Visa and American Express. No discount fees, no bank settlement service fees. For consumers and for merchants and everyone involved, it's going to be a lot of savings, tremendous cost savings, tremendous amount of savings in time. There's all sorts of benefits. Trust me, when you introduce innovation and competition, particularly into a legacy dinosaur system like what we have here, you're going to see a major difference in terms of what you can do and what you don't need to be involved with. Okay, right now we have everything. We have all the complications, all of the overhead, all of the bureaucracy, and none of the benefits. But you go to China, you go to Japan, you go to Sweden, you go to some of these countries, they get all the benefits, and none of the bureaucracy, none of the meddling and restricting and financial oppression part of it. So it's a big difference. Let's get into this article because we have actually a lot of ground to cover, and I don't know how far we can get into it. But the article will be published on the website nonetheless. So this article is entitled "The Medical Tourism Medical Tourism, aka the internationalization of healthcare." Let me repeat that, okay? This article is called "Medical Tourism, aka the internationalization of healthcare." Now, the reason why we are giving it a very simple translation as far as calling it the internationalization of healthcare is mainly because that's what we're talking about. When we talk about medical tourism, and we'll get into the nuts and bolts of that, we're basically talking about developing a healthcare system that's not so much geographic based. See, this is one of the problems. We're talking about the problem, then we're talking about solutions. One of the problems is in the developing countries, you have a healthcare system that is very well developed, gets you access to all of the neat equipment, bells and the whistles associated with the equipment, the doctors with all the pedigrees and everything imaginable. But the costs are prohibitive for most people. In addition to that, a lot of what's going on here is starting to become very intrusive and very restricting in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. If there's a certain procedure, if there's a certain doctor, if there's a certain hospital or facility or something, your healthcare plan pretty much dictates what you can do, what you can't do, who you can see, who you can't see, and all of that. But, and see, this is the big part. I don't think we should be restricted in that manner when it comes to healthcare. If you want access to this facility, this doctor, that doctor, you should be able to go to those people. As a matter of fact, you should be able to travel to whatever country and know that you're getting quality health care at a decent price. But right now, see, the United States has a monopoly pretty much on decent health care. The pricing mechanism is outrageous, mainly because no one in the United States has inherent interest on making sure that the costs are under control. We have no idea what procedures are worth from one doctor to the other, what hospitals are charging for this procedure, that surgery, and such, because insurance companies are involved for the most part, and the insurance companies don't have a whole lot of incentive to do the audits to determine what the operations and procedures actually cost. So we got a lot of embedded costs, and no one knows why, no one cares why, except for very few companies. that have actually done audits and they found out that a $50,000 knee replacement actually costs $8,000 when you do your audit in your hospital. So certain things like that. Let's get into the article now that we know what the problem is, and you guys are probably looking for solutions and ideas. So now, medical tourism is not a new concept. Okay? Excuse me, it goes back to the 1800s. In the 1800s, and this is the history, the first recorded instance of people traveling for medical treatment dates back thousands of years to when Greek pilgrims traveled from the eastern Mediterranean to a small area in the Saronic Gulf called Epidaurus. This territory was the sanctuary of the healing gods Asclepios. Spa towns and sanitaria. Sanitaria, by the way, are actually places where people go and recuperate. And in the United States, sanitariums are a different word and different concept altogether. But sanitaria, in this particular uses of the word, refers to spas and resorts where people go and they bathe in the healing waters of this creek, that river, or a jacuzzi or something, and they take advantage of the healing properties. So anyway, spa towns and sanitaria were early forms of medical tourism. In the 18th century, Europe, patients visited spas because they were places with supposedly health-giving mineral waters, treating diseases from gout to liver disorders and bronchitis. Description. Factors that have led to the increasing popularity of medical travel include the high cost of health care, long wait times for certain procedures, the ease and affordability of international travel, and the improvements in both technology and standards of care in many countries. The avoidance of waiting times is the leading factor for medical tourism from the from the UK, whereas in the United States, the main reason is cheaper prices abroad. Many surgery procedures performed in medical tourism destinations cost a fraction of the price they do in other countries. For example, in the United States, a liver transplant that may cost $300,000 would generally cost about $91,000 in Taiwan. A large draw to medical travel is convenience and speed. Countries that operate public healthcare systems often have long wait times for certain operations. For example, an estimated 782,936 Canadian patients spent an average waiting time of 9.4 weeks on medical waiting lists in 2005. Canada has also set waiting time benchmarks for non-urgent medical procedures, including a 26-week waiting period for a hip replacement and a 16-week wait for cataract surgery. In first world countries, such as the United States, medical tourism has large growth prospects and potentially destabilizing implications. A forecast by Deloitte Consulting, published in August 2008, projected that medical tourism originating in the U.S. could jump by a factor of 10 over the next decade. An estimated 750,000 Americans went abroad for health care in 2007, and the report estimated that 1.5 million would seek health care outside the United States in 2008. The growth in medical tourism has the potential to cost U.S. healthcare providers billions of dollars in lost revenue. I just want to make sure you guys understand, again, this is not a new or novel concept, and it's a growing trend, but it's based upon demand. See, whenever you have this type of demand, guess what's going to happen? All the support services, all the doctors, all the facilities and such are going to obviously migrate to where the demand is. So if you go from 750,000 Americans taking advantage of traveling abroad, and that number jumps to 1.5 million in 2008, then you can imagine what it is now. Okay, this is outdated information, but in 2008, if there's 1.5 million, we're probably 5, 6, 7 million people into this by now that are traveling abroad for procedures and operations and such. Okay, moving right along. An authority at the Harvard Business School stated that medical tourism is promoted much more heavily in the United Kingdom than in the United States. Additionally, some patients in some first world countries are finding that insurance either does not cover orthopedic surgery such as knee or hip replacement or limits the choice of the facility, surgeon, or prosthetics to be used. Popular medical travel worldwide destinations include Canada, Cuba, Costa Rica, Ecuador, India, Israel, Jordan, Malaysia, Mexico, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, and the United States. Popular destinations for cosmetic surgery include Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Ecuador, Mexico, Turkey, Thailand, and the Ukraine. According to the Sociedad Boliviana de Chirurgia Plástica y Reconstructiva, more than 70% of middle and upper-class women in the country have had some form of plastic surgery. Other destination countries include Belgium, Poland, Slovakia, and South Africa. Some people travel for assisted pregnancy, such as in vitro fertilization or surrogacy, or freezing embryos for retro reproduction. So it looks like we have tons of people traveling, all sorts of different reasons for traveling. And again, as far as I can tell, this is growing and it's not going to stop. The precedent has already been set. So moving right along. However, perceptions of medical tourism are not always positive. In places like the United States, which has high standards of quality, high standards of quality, medical tourism is viewed as risky. In some parts of the world, wider political issues can influence where medical tourists would choose to seek out health care. Health tourism providers have developed as intermediaries which unite potential medical tourists with provider hospitals and other organizations. Companies that focus on medical value travel typically provide nurse case managers to assist patients with pre- and post-travel medical issues. They may also help provide resources for follow-up care upon the patient's return. Circumvention tourism is also an area of medical tourism that has grown. Circumvention tourism is travel in order to access medical services that are legal in the destination country, but illegal in the home country. This can include travel for fertility treatments that aren't yet approved in the home country, abortion, doctor-assisted suicide. Abortion tourism can be found most commonly in Europe, where travel between countries is relatively simple. Ireland and Poland, two countries with highly restrictive abortion laws, have the highest rates of circumvention tourism. In Poland especially, it is estimated that each year nearly 7,000 women travel to the UK, where abortion services are free, through the National Health Service. National Health Service. There are also efforts being made by independent organizations and doctors, such as with Women on Waves, to help women circumvent draconian laws in order to access medical services. With Women on Waves, the organization uses a mobile clinic aboard a ship to provide medical abortions in international waters where the law of the country whose flag is flown applies. International Health Accreditation. International Health Accreditation is the process of certifying a level of quality for healthcare providers and programs across multiple countries. International Health Care Accreditation organizations certify a wide range of healthcare programs such as hospitals, primary care centers, medical transport, and ambulatory care services. There are a number of accreditation schemes available based in a number of different countries around the world. The oldest international accrediting body is Accreditation Canada, formerly known as the Canadian Council on Health Services Accreditation, which accredited the Bermuda Hospital Board as soon as 1968. Since then, it has accredited hospitals and health service organizations in 10 other countries. JCI Gold sealed an example of international health standard accreditation. In the United States, the accreditation group Joint Commission, it's called Joint Commission International, or JCI, was formed in 1994 to provide international clients education and consulting services. Many international hospitals today see obtaining international accreditation as a way to attract American patients. Joint Commission International is a relative of the Joint Commission in the United States. Both are U.S.-style independent private sector non-for-profit organizations that develop nationally and internationally recognized procedures and standards to help improve patient care and safety. They work with hospitals to help them meet Joint Commission standards for patient care and then accredit those hospitals meeting the standards. A British scheme called QHA, Trent Accreditation, is an active, independent, holistic accreditation scheme, as well as JCR.org, which monitors the success metrics and standards of almost 500,000 medical clinics worldwide. I think it's just worth noting that even when it comes to holistics, which I'm a firm believer in holistics and homeopathy and eating organically and all that other stuff, that we have a body that's actually accrediting facilities. Again, the QHA Trent Accreditation. That's an active, independent, holistic accreditation scheme, and including JCR.org. The different international healthcare accreditation schemes vary in quality, size, cost, intent, and the skill and intensity of their marketing. They also vary in terms of cost to hospitals, healthcare institutions making use of them. Increasingly, some hospitals are looking towards dual international accreditation, perhaps having both JCI to cover potential U.S. clientele and Accreditation Canada or QHA Trent. As a result of competition between clinics for American medical tourists, there have been initiatives to rank hospitals based upon patient-reported metrics. Risk. These are the risks, you guys. Medical tourism carries some risks that locally provided medical care either does not carry or carries to a much lesser degree. Some countries, such as Africa or Thailand, have very different infectious disease-related epidemiology to Europe and North America. Exposure to diseases without having built up natural immunity can be a hazard for weakened individuals, specifically with respect to gastrointestinal diseases. Example, hepatitis A, amoebic dysentery, paratyphoid, which could weaken progress and expose the patient to mosquito-transmitted diseases, influenza, and tuberculosis. However, because in poor tropical nations, diseases run the gamut, doctors seem to be more open to the possibility of considering any infectious disease, including HIV, TB, and typhoid, while there are cases in the West where patients were consistently misdiagnosed for years because such diseases are perceived to be rare in the West. So I think we want to reiterate that the doctors in the developing countries, because they're more familiar with having a lot of patients who have had complications because of these diseases that are inherent in the developing countries. They're on the lookout for the symptoms, and they're on guard, right? But in the West, as this article points out, a lot of doctors in the West, they aren't so much on guard or concerned because, you know, they haven't heard so much about the prevalence of these diseases, you know, in the West, even though they do happen. And when you take things for granted, or when you become too complacent, like the doctors in the West, when it comes to these infectious diseases and such, then you overlook it and you misdiagnose it and you call it something else, not realizing that it's indeed typhoid, influenza, malaria, or something like that, whatever it is. So that's good that the doctors in the developing countries are actually more attentive when it comes to these things. The quality of post-operative care can also vary dramatically depending upon the hospital's and the country, and may be different from U.S. or European standards. Also, traveling long distances soon after surgery can increase the risk of complications. Long flights and decreased mobility associated with window seats can predispose one towards developing deep vein thrombosis and potentially a pulmonary embolism. Other vacation activities can be problematic as well. For example, scars may become darker and more noticeable if they are sunburned while healing. Also, health facilities treating medical tourists may lack adequate complaints policy to deal appropriately and fairly with complaints made by dissatisfied patients. Differences in healthcare provider standards around the world have been recognized by the World Health Organization. In 2004, it launched the World Alliance for Patient Safety. This body assists hospitals and governments around the world in setting patient safety policy and practices that can become particularly relevant when providing medical tourism services. So it looks like the trend is definitely getting more standards, getting more international bodies, getting more organizations that are going to help us address the complications of traveling around the world for medical procedures, you guys. If there are complications, the patient may need to stay in the foreign country for longer than planned, or if they have returned home, will not have easy access for follow-up care. Patients sometimes travel to another country to obtain medical procedures that doctors in their home country refuse to perform because they believe that the risk of the procedure outweigh the benefits. Such patients may have difficulty getting insurance, whether public or private, to cover follow-up medical costs should the feared complications indeed rise. Legal issues. Receiving medical care abroad may subject medical tourists to unfamiliar legal issues. The limited nature of litigation in various countries is a reason for accessibility. Is a reason for accessibility of care overseas. While some countries currently presenting themselves as attractive medical tourism destinations provide some form of legal remedies for medical malpractice, these legal avenues may be unappealing to the medical tourist. Should problems arise, patients may not be covered by adequate personal insurance or may be unable to seek compensation via malpractice lawsuits. Hospitals and or doctors in some countries may be unable to pay the financial damages awarded by a court to a patient who has sued them owing to the hospital and or the doctor not processing appropriate insurance cover and or medical indemnity. Issues can also arise for patients who seek out services that are illegal in their home country. In this case, some countries have the jurisdiction to prosecute their citizen once they have returned home, or in extreme cases, extraterritorially arrest and prosecute. In Ireland, especially in the 1980s and 90s, there were cases of young rape victims who were banned from traveling to Europe to get legal abortions. Ultimately, Ireland's Supreme Court overturned the ban. They and many other countries have since created right to travel amendments. Moving right along to ethical issues. There could be major ethical issues around medical tourism. Okay, for example, the illegal purchase of organs and tissues for transplantation has been methodically documented and studied in countries such as India, China, Colombia, and the Philippines. The Declaration of Istanbul distinguishes between ethically problematic transplant tourism and travel for transplantation. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Medical tourism may raise broader ethical issues for the countries in which it is promoted. For example, in India, some argue that a policy of medical tourism... Let me see, I lost my place here. Medical tourism may raise broader ethical issues by the country in which it is promoted. For example, in India, some argue that a policy of medical tourism for the classes and health missions for the masses will lead to a deepening of the inequities already embedded in the healthcare system. Basically, they're saying there that foreigners coming into the country get a high priority as compared to the people who live in India. Excuse the noise. So that these problems are indeed being resolved and addressed. So it's not as bad as it seems. In Thailand in 2008, it was stated that doctors in Thailand had become so busy with foreigners that Thai patients are having trouble getting care. Medical tourism centered on new technologies such as stem cell treatments and is often criticized on grounds of fraud, blatant lack of scientific rationale, and patient safety. However, when pioneering advanced technologies such as providing unproven therapies to patients outside of regular clinical trials, it is often challenging to differentiate between acceptable medical innovation and unacceptable patient exploitation. These ethical issues are going to be inherently debated and discussed, whether you're in a foreign country or whether you're in a developed country. People are always going to want to have procedures and operations that may seem like it's only meant for the most wealthy people as compared to the people who don't have as much in the way of financial resources. So that's going to be an ongoing issue, okay, regardless. Employer-sponsored healthcare in the United States. Some U.S. employees have begun exploring medical travel programs as a way to cut employee health care costs. Such proposals have raised stormy debates between employers and trade unions representing workers. And workers. Let's see. With one union stating that it deplored the shocking new approach of offering employees overseas treatment in return for a share of the company's savings. The unions also raised the issues of legal liability should something go wrong, and potential job losses in the U.S. healthcare industry if treatment is outsourced. Well, I can tell you right now, I'm a little bit biased against unions, only because while they're protecting U.S. jobs and such, you got to realize that the trend is going from medical tourism being a new and novel concept towards internationalization of healthcare. Then we don't want to get in the way of that trend. It simply means that unions are going to have to adapt. Okay, as we'll see, there's serious progress being made when it comes to the internationalization of healthcare. Employers may offer incentives such as paying for air travel and waiving out-of-pocket expenses for care outside the United States. For example, in January 2008, Hannaford Brothers, a supermarket chain based in Maine, began paying the entire medical bill for employees to travel to Singapore for hip and knee replacements, including travel for the patient and companion. Medical travel packages can integrate with all types of healthcare insurance, including limited benefit plans, preferred provider organizations, and high-deductible health plans. In 2000, in 2000, Blue Shield of California began the United States' first cross-border health plan. Patients in California could travel to one of the 3 certified hospitals in Mexico for treatment under California Blue Shield. In 2007, a subsidiary of Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, called Companion Global Healthcare, teamed up with hospitals in Thailand, Singapore, Turkey, Ireland, Costa Rica, and India. And a 2008 article in Fast Company magazine discusses the globalization of healthcare and describes how various players in the United States healthcare market have begun to explore it. So, yeah, basically we're talking about the globalization of healthcare, standardization of healthcare across various countries, various accreditation bodies that are going to give us the reassurance that doctors and hospitals and procedures and costs have been looked at and standardized, and I think what's going to happen is at some point in time in the future, traveling for hip and knee replacement, heart surgeries, whatever, is going to be such that you will be able to compare effectively from country to country and get the cost savings, and at the same time, we won't have to worry so much about the restrictions, particularly those that we encounter in the United States. So in the United States also, there's conflicts of interest between large hospital chains becoming corporatized, for example, whereby you have major corporations that influence what procedures you can get, how much it's going to cost, and what the costs are going to be, what equipment is going to be used. Doctors, unfortunately, are almost bribed to use certain equipment and certain procedures, and the doctors get these free perks and all these different things that dictate more about what procedure is used as compared to what procedure is best. See, we always want the best procedure, not necessarily that which pays the doctors the most money based upon the manufacturer giving out some incentive or something like that. So in the United States, we got privacy, what is it called, pharmacy benefit management companies who get in the way and they inflate the cost of the pharmaceuticals and the drugs. Then we got a lot of bureaucracy going on as far as hospital chains are concerned, compelling doctors to perform certain procedures with certain pieces of equipment, and then they get kickbacks and all that. So there's some inherent problems in this multi-trillion-dollar industry in the United States, and we definitely need to globalize and standardize and get the accreditation going and get familiarized with all these different associations and ancillary services that are going to give us more information, more advice, so that we can travel all over the planet to get health care. Okay, so health care can be accessible to everybody, whether you're in Africa, India, or United States, or Canada, or wherever. Anyway, we're going to close out this session, and we got through this article, I think, and I'm going to paste. We got through the podcast. I'm going to include the article and some other resources so that you guys can travel all over the planet and take advantage of the internationalization of healthcare. Keep your eyes and ears open. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.